The comforting scent of slow braised oxtails drifted through our high-rise condo in Buckhead, coating every corner with warmth. It was the kind of scent that used to make me feel safe, loved, at home. But that evening, the fragrance felt like a lie, draped in steam. My husband, Marcellus, was at the stove, humming an old R&B tune while adjusting his blend of spices. He wore the navy apron I gifted him on our second anniversary, an apron he always joked made him feel like a husband of the year. From behind, he looked exactly like the man the world believed he was: dependable, handsome, cultured, a man who took care of his wife while climbing the corporate ladder. But that night, the illusion cracked. I sat at the kitchen island, flipping through a design magazine, pretending to read, while watching his phone resting silently on the marble countertop. The black screen stared back like a sealed vault, hiding truths I didn't want to face. I had ignored the signs for weeks. Late nights, unexplained meetings, extra cologne, sudden gym sessions. Still, I told myself I was overthinking, that marriage had ups and downs, that my husband wasn't like those men. Then his phone lit up. No sound. Just a cold, bright flash. One message, one sentence. "Boss, I miss you." The name on the notification was Kayla, the new intern he had mentioned once or twice. The one he said was sharp, respectful, and eager to learn. I had smiled then, even joked that his team needed young, fresh talent. I didn't realize I had been the naive one. The message didn't hurt me the way I'd expected. Maybe that part of me had already died a week earlier, the day I discovered bank transfers that didn't make sense, the day my gut stopped whispering and started screaming. Marcellus turned, smiling brightly, asking me to taste the gravy. I pretended to enjoy it. He returned happily to the stove while something icy crawled up my spine. I reached for his phone with hands steadier than they should have been. His passcode? Our wedding anniversary. The irony stung. The screen unlocked. The message thread with Kayla sat open like an exposed wound. I didn't read everything, just enough to confirm the betrayal I already knew existed. Instead of confronting him, I typed, "Come over. My wife isn't home tonight." And I sent it. Cold, precise, controlled. A trap designed by the very woman he underestimated. I screenshot the message, sent it to my own phone, deleted the evidence from his, and placed his device back exactly as it was. Angle, position, everything. Then I breathed and waited. My hands trembled, not from fear but from the power of knowing what was coming. Dinner continued like a perfectly rehearsed performance. He served me rice, placed the best piece of oxtail on my plate, spoke with warmth, laughed at his own jokes, never knowing that every word, every smile, every gesture only deepened the disgust twisting inside me. When I finally pushed my half-eaten plate away, claiming I wasn't hungry, he looked worried, touched my forehead, asked if I was okay, but I wasn't his sweet, trusting wife anymore. I was the storm he had unknowingly invited, and the doorbell would ring soon. What happens when the other woman walks straight into the wife's perfectly laid trap? In part 2, the door opens and the real game begins. The minutes after dinner stretched like hours. The condo felt too quiet, too calm, like the air was holding its breath along with me. Marcellus finished cleaning up in the kitchen, humming softly, completely unaware that his perfect world was seconds from cracking open. I sat on the sofa in the living room, my eyes fixed on the front door, my pulse steady but sharp. The clock's ticking felt louder than usual. Each second brought her closer. Part of me wished she wouldn't come, that the message I sent from his phone had gone ignored, that she was smarter than this, that I could wake up from this nightmare with one last thread of hope. But the colder, stronger part of me, the part he created, wanted her to show up, wanted the truth to stand in the doorframe and face me. At exactly 8 p.m., the bell rang. Ding dong! The sound sliced through the silence like a scalpel. Marcellus's head jerked up, surprise flashing across his face. He looked at the door, then at me. "Who's that at this hour?" he asked, frowning slightly. He had no idea. I didn't give him time to move. "I'll get it," I said calmly. My voice was steady, too steady. Even he seemed to sense something was off. I stood and walked to the door with slow, deliberate steps. Every footstep echoed on the hardwood floor like a countdown. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was focused. I unlocked the door. There she was. Kayla. Young, fresh-faced, wearing a fitted dress entirely too bold for a nighttime visit to her boss's home. In her hands was a small pink box, probably a single cupcake, dressed up cute, like some foolish offering meant for the man behind me. The moment she saw me, the wife, her smile died instantly. Her eyes widened. All the color drained from her cheeks. She froze, like a thief caught under a spotlight. She wasn't expecting me. She thought she'd be greeted by her boss, secretly waiting for her. Maybe imagined he'd smile, flirt, maybe touch her waist as she walked in. Instead, she got me. I didn't speak. I let the silence do its work. It wrapped around her like a cold rope. She stepped back, trembling slightly, clutching the cupcake box like a lifeline she already knew was useless. Behind me, I heard footsteps approaching. "Babe, who is it?" Marcellus called out casually. Those words nearly sent Kayla into shock. Her eyes flickered desperately between him and me, like searching for an escape that wasn't there. I tilted my head and finally gave her a smile. Not a warm one, something colder, sharper. "Hello, Kayla," I said, my voice silk over steel. "Are you here to see my husband?" The question hit her like a slap. Her knees almost buckled. She opened her mouth, but only a stutter came out, some pathetic attempt at a lie about checking on him because she heard he was sick. Sick? Yes. Sick enough to cheat? But I let her lie hang in the air, flimsy and trembling. I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. "Since you're already here, you might as well have a seat." Her face twisted in terror. She didn't want to enter, but fear of exposure, or of me, pushed her in. She walked inside with tiny, hesitant steps, straight into the mouth of the trap I built myself. And behind me, I felt Marcellus's world begin to collapse. Now Kayla is inside the house, but the real humiliation hasn't even begun. The moment Kayla crossed the threshold, the air in the condo shifted. It thickened, heavy, suffocating, like even the walls understood something forbidden had just stepped inside. She stood in the middle of the living room, clutching her cupcake box with both hands as if it were a shield. Her eyes darted around nervously, landing anywhere except on me, or on the man she thought she knew. Marcellus had reached the living room by now. When he saw her standing there, his soul practically left his body. His eyes widened, his mouth fell open, and his phone slipped from his hand onto the sofa. He looked exactly how guilty men look when their lies suddenly grow legs and walk into their house. Confused, panicked, exposed. I gestured to the armchair. "Sit," I said softly. Kayla obeyed like a child caught cheating on a test. She perched on the edge of the chair, knees pressed together, back stiff, her hands trembling around the cupcake box. Marcellus stood frozen by the sofa. He looked at me, then at her, then back at me. He was speechless, desperate for cues on what to do next, but I gave him none. I sat down gracefully on the sofa, crossed my legs, and gestured to the spot beside me. "Sit, husband," I told him, deliberately emphasizing the word. He obeyed immediately, like a man being led to his own execution. The silence that followed was intense enough to make the air buzz. I broke it with a gentle smile. "So, Kayela, you came to see my husband? How thoughtful." My tone was warm, but my eyes were knives. Kayela gulped. I heard he wasn't feeling well, so I brought something." She lifted the cupcake box with burning cheeks. The lie was sloppy, amateur. She knew it. I knew it. And Marcellus definitely knew it. "How sweet of you," I replied. "Most interns don't make late-night visits to their supervisors' homes, but you must be very dedicated." Her shoulders tightened. I stood up slowly. "Let me get you something to drink." I walked to the kitchen, moving deliberately, making just enough noise so they both knew I was still listening. I ignored the crystal glasses and reached for a stack of thin, disposable plastic cups, the kind people throw away after one use. The symbolism wasn't accidental. I poured tap water into one of the cups and placed it on a tray next to two fine china teacups with elegant gold rims, one for me, one for my husband. When I returned, I set the tray down carefully. I placed the plastic cup in front of Kayela. Then I handed the gold-rimmed cups to myself and Marcellus. Kayela's face flushed deep red. She understood exactly what the plastic cup meant. Cheap, temporary, replaceable. I smiled politely, sipping my tea with slow, exaggerated enjoyment. "So, Kayela, how is the internship? My husband says you're quick to learn." Her eyes flicked toward Marcellus, begging him for help, but he sat rigid, palms sweating, staring at the floor. I reached over and rested my hand on his arm, leaning my head lightly on his shoulder, the picture of a loving, comfortable wife. Marcellus went stiff as stone. Kayela's eyes filled with something bitter, envy, humiliation, regret, probably all three. I told her with a sweet smile, "Don't worry, we're very open in this house. No secrets." I let that hang in the air. Then casually I said, "Oh, and by the way, we're planning a getaway soon, a romantic vacation for just the two of us. St. Lucia, candlelight dinners, ocean breeze. Doesn't that sound lovely?" Kayela swallowed hard, harder than the tap water she refused to touch. Her humiliation has only begun. In part 4, the wife turns the conversation toward money, loyalty, and the future, slowly crushing both of them under the weight of truth. Kayela sat frozen in the armchair, barely breathing. Her gaze bounced nervously between the gold-trimmed teacup in my hand and the flimsy plastic cup in front of her. The contrast wasn't subtle, and she knew it. In this house, hierarchy mattered, and tonight, I intended to remind her exactly where she stood. I stroked Marcellus's arm gently, my head resting on his shoulder, an affectionate gesture that used to be natural. Tonight, it felt like a perfectly executed weapon. "So, Kayela, how is it going working with my husband? He mentions you sometimes, says you're eager." The word eager made her flinch. Yes, ma'am. He's a good supervisor," she whispered, staring at her lap. "Good?" I laughed lightly. "He's excellent. He's responsible, hardworking, loyal." I let that last word linger, heavy and sharp. Marcellus swallowed hard. Kayela's fingers tightened around the plastic cup, bending it slightly. I shifted gears. "You know, we've been looking at property lately, a lake house in the Blue Ridge Mountains, somewhere calm, somewhere we can build a garden, maybe even start a family." I felt Marcellus stiffen beside me. The mention of children always pierced deeper than anything else. He had no idea whether I was saying it for sincerity or strategy, but he didn't dare interrupt. Kayela, meanwhile, looked like she'd been stabbed in the chest. She blinked rapidly, her throat working as she tried to swallow down her emotions. Don't you think that's lovely, Kayela? I asked gently. She nodded too quickly. Yes, it's beautiful. Her voice cracked. I smiled. Of course it is. These are plans only a wife gets to dream about. Another subtle hit, another wound for both of them. I leaned forward and took a slow sip of light tea. But buying a home isn't cheap, I continued casually. Luckily, my parents are helping. They're contributing $15,000 as a gift. They're excited for their future grandchildren. I watched Kayela's expression carefully. That number, 15,000, might as well have been a brick I placed on her chest. She probably never imagined the man she was playing around with had a whole life already built. A life she could never fit into, no matter how tight her dresses were. Marcellus was shrinking second by second. The more I spoke about our future, the more his guilt dragged him down like quicksand. Silence stretched between us again, thick, suffocating. Kayela finally whispered, I'm sure you will have a wonderful life. She didn't sound like she believed it. She sounded like someone watching a door close forever on a dream she had no right to chase. I tilted my head. You seem tense, dear. Is the water okay? Another soft cut, gentle voice, cruel meaning. Yes, ma'am, I'm fine. You don't look fine. I let the words settle like dust, then glanced at Marcellus. Darling, don't you think it's rude that she hasn't touched the water? Why don't you prepare something else for her? Cut some fruit for our guest. His head snapped up. He looked at me as if I'd asked him to carve his own heart, but he obeyed. He stumbled to his feet and hurried to the kitchen, hands shaking. Kayela watched him walk away with an expression I knew too well. The moment of fantasy collapses, the moment reality shatters illusions, the moment a girl realizes she wasn't chosen, she was used. He returned minutes later with a plate of unevenly sliced apples. The fruit trembled on the plate the same way his hands trembled placing it down. Thank you, baby, I said sweetly, picking up the best piece and bringing it to his mouth. Here, let me feed you. He froze, but he opened his mouth. Kayela's eyes filled with something that resembled heartbreak or humiliation, maybe both. I pushed the plate toward her. Eat, Kayela. You must be hungry. She stared at the apple like it was poison. The tension is building, but the explosion hasn't happened yet. Kayla sat frozen, staring at the plate of apples as if the fruit itself carried judgment. Her throat bobbed in a painful swallow, but she didn't reach for a single slice. The humiliation was already written all over her, on her stiff posture, her trembling fingers, the way her eyes refused to meet mine. I leaned back comfortably, pretending not to notice her sinking deeper into misery. Marcellus sat beside me like a statue carved from fear. Every breath he took sounded shaky, uneven. Good. Let them drown in the atmosphere they created. After a long, agonizing silence, Kayla cleared her throat. It was barely audible, but enough to snap both of our attention toward her. Boss? She said weakly. Is your stomach feeling better? Did it stop hurting? Marcellus's head jerked up like she'd slapped him. Stomach? Better? He blinked rapidly, panic exploding behind his eyes. He knew exactly what he had just allowed her to reveal. I tilted my head slowly, letting the silence stretch. My husband's stomach? I repeated softly. Kayla's face drained of color. She stammered, I saw him touch it at work. I thought maybe he wasn't well. A terrible lie, a desperate lie, and judging by Marcellus's ash-colored face, a lie that wasn't a lie at all. He had shared private information with her, details he never once mentioned in front of me. I let out a short laugh. It wasn't warm. It wasn't even amused. It was sharp, like the edge of a blade scraping glass. "How interesting," I said. "I sleep in the same bed as my husband, but somehow you know more about his health than I do." Kayla flinched, as if the words themselves slapped her. Marcellus tried to speak. "Baby, it's not. She just guessed." "Guessed?" I turned to him sharply. "Oh, so she guessed your chronic stomach issues, the ones you hide from everyone because you don't like appearing weak. Those issues you only complain about when you're extremely comfortable with someone?" He wilted instantly. Kayla opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her hands shook so violently the plastic cup rattled against the glass table. I stood slowly, letting the tension grow heavier. "You know what's really fascinating, Kayla?" I asked softly. "How familiar you sound. How invested." She shook her head rapidly. No, I didn't mean..." "And bringing honey with black garlic, a homemade remedy only someone very close would think to offer. Isn't that sweet?" Kayla's lips trembled. Her eyes were glossy and wild, like a trapped animal. She whispered, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean..." I cut her off. "No, dear, you absolutely meant it. That level of concern doesn't come from an intern who barely knows her supervisor. It comes from someone who crossed a line." Her breath hitched. Marcellus covered his face with both hands, shoulders slumping as if crushed under 1,000 pounds of shame. I stepped closer to Kayla. She shrank back. "Sweetheart, if you were truly sorry, you wouldn't have come at all." She broke. Her shoulders trembled violently as she fought tears. The plastic cup shook so hard I thought it would spill. But the real blow, the one that would leave her breathless, that was still coming. The wife is done playing. She reveals the trap she set, and Kayla realizes the "come over, my wife isn't home" message wasn't from Marcellus at all. Kayla's breaths were shallow, shaky, almost wheezing. She sat on the edge of the armchair, shoulders trembling, fingers twisted together like she was trying to hold herself from falling apart. And honestly, she was. The pressure in the room was crushing her, inch by inch. I walked around the coffee table slowly, unhurried, deliberate, like a predator examining a wounded animal. "Kayla," I said softly, "you look terrified." She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "Didn't you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Most people don't show up at a married man's home at night by accident, with cupcakes and makeup and perfume." She froze. Behind me, I could hear Marcellus's shaky breathing. Sweat dripped down his temples. Every word I said pushed him deeper into dread, and he knew exactly what was coming next. But Kayla didn't know yet. Not fully. Not until I decided to drop the match. I moved to the table and picked up my phone, the one I used earlier. I ran my finger across the screen casually. "You know," I began lightly, "the world is strange these days. Women sending messages to married men, bold messages, shameless messages." Kayla's eyes widened. Her grip tightened on her knees. "Sometimes," I continued, "those messages pop up while the wife is sitting right there." Her whole body jolted. I smiled, small, calm, terrifying. "Just the other night, a message popped up on my husband's phone. 4 little words." Kayla's face turned stark white. She looked like the ground had vanished beneath her feet. And suddenly, I added, a reply was sent to you. Her breath completely stopped. I turned toward her slowly, letting the truth settle like cold ash. That message you received, the one that said, "Come over, my wife isn't home tonight." I paused for effect. I sent that. The silence exploded into a suffocating weight. Kayla let out a tiny gasp, her eyes filling with raw terror. She stared at me as if she were seeing a ghost. No, no, you sent it? I nodded calmly. Yes, I typed it, and I sent it from Marcellus's phone. She covered her mouth with trembling fingers. Her mascara smudged as tears spilled down her cheeks. She realized that every step she made toward this condo tonight had been orchestrated. Every minute of her humiliation planned. You knew? She choked out. I knew everything, I said simply. The transfers, the late nights, the flirting at work. Then I tilted my head, and I wanted to see whether the girl bold enough to message a married man saying, "I miss you," was bold enough to walk into his home when she thought I wasn't around. Her shoulders curled forward, as if the weight of her choices was crushing her. Behind me, Marcellus's voice finally cracked. "Baby, please." I lifted a hand sharply. He silenced instantly. Kayla whispered, broken. "I shouldn't have come. I'm so sorry." Her whole body shook like she might collapse. I softened my tone, but not my intention. I didn't call you here to hit you, or scream, or drag you by your hair. That would be too easy, too common. Kayla's composure shattered like thin glass. The realization hit her so hard she could barely sit upright. She clutched her purse, her breath coming in small, broken gasps. I shouldn't have come," she whispered, her voice trembling violently. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Her apology wasn't brave. It wasn't noble. It was survival instinct, raw and panicked. She stood abruptly, almost tripping over her own feet as she stumbled toward the door. But I wasn't finished. I moved slowly, blocking her path without rushing, without raising my voice, just calm, unwavering presence. My silence alone made her flinch. She tried to look anywhere but at me. "I really have to go. My mom is calling me. Something happened at home. I have to leave." A terrible lie, obvious and desperate. I tilted my head. Running already? Why so sudden? We were just having a wonderful conversation. She shook her head rapidly. "Please, I just need to go." Behind us, Marcellus stood frozen near the sofa, devastated, unable to move or speak. His mistress was collapsing, and his wife was in complete control. He didn't know where to look. Shame, fear, panic, it all churned inside him. Caleb finally reached the front door with trembling hands. She fumbled with her shoes, nearly dropping one. Her fingers wouldn't cooperate. She was shaking too hard. I walked up behind her quietly. "Kayla." She froze instantly. Slowly, she turned toward me, eyes wide and glossy with terror. She didn't know if I would scream, slap her, drag her out by her hair. All she saw in my face was calm, frightening control. I leaned in until my lips were near her ear. My voice was a whisper, soft, gentle, and cold as winter. "Next time you come to my husband's home, at least call. If the neighbors see you sneaking around at night, they might think something improper is going on." She swallowed hard. Her chin trembled. "And remember," I added, "I'm not always out of the house." Her mouth fell open in a silent gasp. A fresh wave of terror washed over her. She nodded repeatedly, so fast and frantic she looked like a malfunctioning toy. I understand. I will never come back, I swear. She practically sprinted to the elevator. Her heels clacked loudly against the hallway floor, echoing her panic. She pressed the elevator button again and again, as if the steel doors were her escape from hell itself. When they finally opened, she jumped inside and jabbed the close button like her life depended on it. The door slid shut. She was gone. One problem removed. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then I turned and closed the door behind me with a firm, echoing click. The condo felt colder now, emptier, but sharper. The facade had cracked. The truth was bleeding through every corner. And now for the real confrontation. I walked back into the living room slowly and deliberately. Marcellus was still sitting on the sofa, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together staring at the floor. He looked up when he heard my footsteps, and I saw fear flicker through his eyes. Good. He should be afraid. I crossed my arms and stood over him. The first word slipped from my mouth like a blade. Explain yourself. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then broke down. But tears weren't enough. Excuses weren't enough. Now it was his turn to face the wreckage he created. The wife finally unleashes the full truth. Every screenshot, every bank transfer, every secret, and his husband breaks. And the marriage does too. Marcellus stared at me with red, frightened eyes, still shaken from watching his mistress flee in tears. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The condo felt hollow, like all the warmth the home once held had drained out through the cracks in our marriage. I kept my voice steady, too steady. Explain, I repeated. Now. He opened his mouth, but only a pathetic whimper came out. He tried again. Baby, please, you have to believe me. I didn't know she was coming. I didn't send that message. I swear I didn't. I cut him off. I know you didn't send it. I leaned forward, because I did. His face went pale as if he'd been slapped by the truth. He blinked rapidly, panic swirling in his eyes. He hadn't expected me to confess it so plainly. You tricked me, he said. No, I said coldly. You tricked yourself. I walked to the cabinet, reached into my purse, and pulled out the envelope I had prepared days earlier. The envelope containing every piece of evidence I'd quietly collected. I tossed it on the table. The papers spilled out dramatically, landing in a messy stack between us. Look at it. He hesitated, but my glare forced him to comply. He reached for the first paper, and his entire body began to shake. It was a bank statement. 3 months' worth. Every suspicious transfer circled in bright red. $80, $120, $250. And then the big one, $1,500. Happy birthday. To Kayla. His breath caught in his throat. Wait, he started. I can explain. Don't waste your breath, I snapped. I handed him the next sheet. Screenshots from the WhatsApp conversations, flirty messages, inside jokes, private meetings, subtle hints. Not explicit, but intimate enough to be damning. He swallowed hard, staring at the words he thought were hidden. Then I dropped a small movie ticket stub into his hand. Remember this? I asked. The night you claimed you were at a client dinner? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Then I pulled out the last piece, a long brown strand of hair sealed inside a small clear bag. I held it between 2 fingers. My hair is short and black. Yours is shaved. So whose hair is this, Marcellus? His lips parted with no sound. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. The evidence lay between us like a graveyard of lies. I stepped closer and spoke calmly, without anger, because the anger had already burned itself out. You didn't just flirt. You didn't just get tempted. You built a second life with her. A secret one. A selfish one. Tears finally spilled down his cheeks.
He fell to his knees, grabbing at my hands like a drowning man reaching for the shore. Please, please, don't leave me, he cried. I messed up. I was stupid. I didn't mean to hurt you. Give me one last chance. I'll do anything. I pulled my hands back sharply. No, I whispered. You had your chance. You had 6 years of chances. His face collapsed. I turned away and picked up the suitcase I had packed earlier. The suitcase waiting quietly in the bedroom, like a final sentence. When he saw it, his voice broke completely. You're leaving, he choked. Yes, I said without turning around. Tonight. I placed a document on the table. The debt agreement for the $40,000 my parents had lent us years ago. You will repay this, every cent. He sobbed harder. Ayana, please, don't do this. But I was already walking toward the door. With every step, the weight on my chest lifted. His world was falling apart. Mine was finally being rebuilt. In the final part, the wife leaves not just the house, but the entire marriage behind. And her revenge isn't finished yet. The husband's downfall is only beginning.
Marcellus crawled across the floor after me, his palms sliding on the hardwood as he tried to catch my ankle like a desperate child reaching for a parent. His voice cracked again and again beneath the weight of his panic. Ayana, please, don't leave. We can fix this. I swear I'll change. I'll get therapy. I'll block her. I'll quit my job if I have to. Please don't walk out. I stopped at the doorway, not because his words moved me, but because I wanted him to hear mine clearly. Fix? I repeated softly. You didn't break a glass, Marcellus. You broke a marriage. There's no glue for that. He pressed his forehead to the floor, sobbing. But tears were meaningless. Regret meant nothing when it came after betrayal. I loved you, he whispered hoarsely. I turned and looked at him, truly looked, not at the man he pretended to be, but at the man he actually was. You loved the comfort I gave you, I said. You loved the version of yourself you could be around me, but you didn't love me enough to protect me from your selfishness. He cried harder, reaching for me again, but this time I stepped back. I picked up my suitcase, my coat, my purse. My hands didn't tremble. My voice didn't shake. There was a strange calm in my chest, like the eye of a storm had finally passed. I'm done, I told him quietly. You don't get to ask for mercy after giving me wounds. His crying turned into choking sobs. Ayana, don't leave me alone. That's something you should have thought about before you invited someone else into our marriage. He collapsed again, chest heaving. I unlocked the door, and with one final breath, I said, I hope she was worth losing everything. Then I stepped out. The hallway felt colder, but freer. The air tasted different, sharp, clean, honest. I walked away without looking back, my heels clicking steadily like punctuation marks at the end of a long, miserable chapter. When the elevator doors closed in front of me, I let out the breath I'd been holding for months. My reflection stared back, tired but unbroken, lost but not defeated. I had survived him, and survival, in its own way, was victory. Hours later, I checked into a small hotel across town, the kind where anonymity is easy and silence isn't something you have to beg for. I placed my suitcase on the floor and sank onto the bed, letting my thoughts finally unravel. There were tears, yes. There was anger, of course. But beneath all of it, there was something else. Relief. Because staying would have meant choosing suffering. Leaving meant choosing myself. I pulled out my phone and blocked his number. Then
I blocked Kyla's. No dramatic messages, no final paragraphs, just silence. Let them deal with the consequences of their choices. Let him face the empty condo, the unanswered questions, the debt, the loneliness he created with his own hands. I wasn't his responsibility anymore, and he was no longer mine. Months later, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. New apartment, new routines, new peace. People often imagine revenge as fire and destruction, but the quiet kind hurts more, because nothing destroys a guilty person more than watching the one they broke rise without them. The end. If today's story touched your heart or kept you hooked, you can show your love by sending a super thanks. Your support helps me continue creating more powerful life stories for you. Thank you, truly, for always being so kind and supportive. I can't wait to read your thoughts about this story. On your screen right now, you'll find 2 news stories that I highly recommend, filled with emotions, twists, and lessons. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for many more inspiring life stories. Until the next one, sending you love, respect, and gratitude. See you in the next story.